So what's the pros and cons of self-managing an investment property versus having a property manager do that for you? Let's start with this. How much is a property manager going to cost you? So how much is a property manager going to cost you? Well, if your property is rented out for around $500 a week, annually, the property management fee is going to be about $3,000. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of money, but you've got to think of it more like an investment in your investment property to help maximize your return on investment. When I meet investors who've previously been self-managing, the most common thing I see is this. Number one is they're not charging market rent. So when they're not charging market rent, often it's by about $100 a week, which means they're losing about $5,000 a year in rental income. So straight away, that just wipes out any property management fees you may be incurring. The next most common thing I see as well is they're not doing routine inspections, or when they are, they're not enforcing them. So the places are usually really poorly kept as well. The next most common thing that I see is tenants in rental arrears. So they get behind in their rental arrears. So there are three things that are the most common things I see when people self-manage, and it's affecting the landlord's potential to maximize their return on investment. And I'm pretty confident most investors, if they go through a property manager, they'll actually get a higher return for all the reasons of what a property manager does. So let's start with what a property manager will do for you compared to self-managing is when they place a tenant, they'll place a quality tenant because they'll go through a rental reference check process to make sure that tenant is placed correctly. The next thing they'll do is they'll ensure that all legislation's being met. Legislation means that the property is safe. Legislation means that there's smoke alarms are all compliant, the pool's all compliant, and things like that. The next thing is property manager will look after maintenance. So part of being a landlord, its responsibility is to ensure that the property is being well maintained, and if any maintenance arises, it needs to be dealt with. So legislation as well means that you can't just rock up at the property whenever you wish. You've got to submit entry notices, and those entry notices have to have the right time frame in them as well. Rental arrears. A property manager will ensure that your tenant does not get behind in rental arrears, so they'll be always paying their rent on time. Looking after the property. It's a really big part and important part of maximizing your return on investment is your property manager will ensure through routine inspections that your tenant is caring for the property appropriately. So all these things are going to help you maximize your return on investment. What about disputes? Unfortunately, with property management, there's often disputes between the tenant and the landlord not having a full understanding. Was a lease signed correctly? Is the lease legitimate? All those sort of things. So your property manager can also ensure that if there's any disputes with the tenant, the property manager will handle that for you. So all these things are going to relieve you from a lot of time to get on and do what you want in your life. But most importantly, the right property manager will help you maximize your return on investment, and they will help you build wealth through your investment property.